Hello, I'm a longtime fan of yours and always love to hear your stories. It was recently when I was listening to one that I remembered some interesting stuff that happened after my mom brought home a doll from a thrift store. Originally, she had intended on removing some pieces and adding inset eyes for a Halloween decoration, though after noticing my interest in the doll, she said I could have it since she got it for next to nothing. The doll has been placed on top of my bookshelf right next to my bed since. Some friends and I have made a few jokes about the doll being haunted. Nothing had ever come from it, though. It was just the kind of thing that one would look at and say, yep, that thing's possessed. Eventually, I began to have an issue with the light in my room wanting to constantly flicker. With how it's set up, I need to remove 3 latches by hand just to get to the bulb. I vented about this to my Abso. With a slight chuckle, she casually asked, "Have you done anything to appease your doll lately?" I casually joined in with the joke and pulled out some hair clips I had gotten from a family trip. They were placed into the doll's hair, and I went to bed shortly afterward. The plan was to ask my dad about switching the bulb in the morning, but I had completely forgotten. Not just that morning either, I had forgotten about the light being an issue at all. Why? Well, after that night, my light had decided to stop flickering after a week straight of it doing it. I told Abso, and we both agreed while it was a bit unsettling, it was probably just a coincidence. So we all forgot about the doll for a few months until my friend Skell started working at the same deli I did. I got a call one night after Skell had worked a shift she took. Originally, she had gotten roped into taking a coworker's shift that night despite telling her that she really was not feeling well. Though the coworker talked to the owner and he said it was fine that Skell took the closing shift if the coworker came back at closing to teach her what to do. The coworker's reasoning for not being able to work that shift was that she had to feed her cats at 7, yet was able to come back to teach Skell how to close. Skell had gotten worse over the night and told our coworker that she really was feeling nauseous. An argument broke out that ended with Skell calling me in tears. After the call, I dreaded having to work with that same coworker that Sunday. I looked toward the doll and made a casual comment about her being able to make my coworker sick that one day so I didn't have to put up with her. Let me tell you that when Sunday came and that coworker did not show up, I was beyond scared. She had called in sick and someone else came in to take her shift. After that, I told my friends about what had happened, and when they paired it up to the light issue, they all decided that the doll had to be haunted. I'm not the type to try and jump to conclusions, but this was starting to sway me a bit. Only one other thing has happened since then, and compared to the others, it's very minor. I just happened to lose my night guard one night and could not find it. The next morning, I woke up and it was right in front of my door. That could have easily been my cats moving it around during the night as well, but despite whether the doll is haunted or not, my friends have decided that when they're over, she needs to be put away inside my closet. I've decided to name her Selkie in the meantime, so I didn't have to continue to call her Creepy Doll. Sorry this is short. Thanks for listening. Hi there. Although I'm only a teenager, I've had many strange things happen to me that I can't seem to explain. If I were to list every single creepy or paranormal thing that has happened, I would be here for about an hour typing, so I'll just tell one of these stories. This happened a month or 2 ago. My mom and I had to stay with my Nana for the night. She lives in a big house in the middle of town and hates being there alone at night. I don't blame her. I sleep up in my aunt's room because she lives in Dublin and she wouldn't visit for another couple weeks. When I went upstairs, there was a box. It had an Amazing Alley doll inside. It was usually in the spare room my grandparents use as an attic. It was a Saturday night and my Nana went to bed around 10. My mom went to bed at around 11 and I stayed up late watching Netflix on my tablet. At around 1, I started to get sleepy, so I took off my glasses and went to sleep. I could hear my mother snoring downstairs, but I could also hear something else. It was like a small thud from outside the bedroom door. I then heard a creepy voice coming from inside the room I was sleeping in. My aunt had 2 beds in her room, a double and a single. I was on the double, and a little girl voice was coming from under the single bed. "Help me, help me," it kept repeating at such a low volume, almost like a whisper. Upon closer inspection, I realized that somehow the doll had gotten down there. And worse yet, the voice was coming from it. Needless to say, it was rather a restless night. The following morning at breakfast, when my mom was awake, I decided to ask her about the doll. She couldn't recall moving it, but she did have an explanation for the voice. She said she remembered it being one of those that had a tape player built into it, where it would repeat whatever was recorded on it. Which begs another question. There are no children in that house, so who was asking for help? When I was 12, I received an old porcelain doll from my great aunt. She was an avid doll collector. If you've heard my past story times, this is the one with that big old house that had the Alice in Wonderland room. Anyways, it was a thoughtful gift from someone who was really passionate about these dolls, but for some reason it always scared the hell out of me. There was something that was just off about it. Maybe it's because I've always been more sensitive to this kind of stuff, but I swear I could feel something off in the very aura of the thing. It made me uncomfortable. It had a sort of heaviness to it that's hard to put into words. The doll itself was beautiful. It had real lace and hand-placed eyelashes on the striking blue glass eyes. It looked like a little blonde bride. Inherently, there shouldn't have been anything really creepy about it. As far as dolls go, it was actually pretty cute and much less scary looking than some of the dolls I had seen. But still, it made me so very uneasy. I think the thing that frightened me the most were the eyes. They followed you wherever you went. But beyond the normal mechanic that comes with glass eyes, there was a heavier feeling behind it. The same feeling you get when an actual person stares at you. It actually felt like a solid gaze on you. But beyond all these superficial creepy elements, there was something in particular that scared me about this doll. It had a propensity to move on its own. It wasn't something I noticed right away. Small movements that weren't easy to catch. I'd have it on the right corner of my dresser with its arms down, and later in the day, it would be more in the middle of the dresser with an arm halfway up. Small things like that. Really, the only reason I can call these to mind now is because, as things escalated, I became more and more vigilant to every little shift. I always had a tendency to keep the doll on my dresser because it was the opposite side of my room, as far away from my bed as I could get it. I would then turn it around at night so I didn't have to see its eyes. It was one morning that I woke to find it turned all the way around, staring right at me from across the room with both its arms raised, that I finally made the jump from minor dislike and suspicion of the thing to full-out fear and disdain for it. My door was still tightly shut from the night before, and there was no signs of someone having entered. I have always been an incredibly light sleeper, to the point that I will still sometimes need earplugs in a quiet room just to get peaceful rest. So if someone had entered, it absolutely would have awoken me. But there it was, turned around and staring me down. From then on, I kept a much closer eye on the thing. I lost count of how many times it had shifted about, subtle enough to go unnoticed if not for being closely observed. I had started to become so unnerved with the thing that I began to tell my mother I didn't want to keep it in my room anymore. I tried using the excuse that I was getting too old to have dollies in my room, but she insisted I couldn't get rid of it because it was a gift from an elderly family member. So it stayed, and so it continued to shift about. What finally broke the uneasy peace was the night I was so unnerved that I decided to close it in my closet overnight. Having it locked away behind a door made me feel immensely better than just turning it around to face the wall. But, unfortunately, the following morning left me feeling more frightened than ever. When I awoke, my porcelain bride sat upon my bedside table, leering down at me. I couldn't believe how this was possible. My old closet door made such a racket to open, it should have awoken me. But there she was. At this point, I couldn't handle it anymore. Being very young and very scared, I thought the best way to handle the situation was to destroy the thing. So, I grabbed the doll by the feet and smashed her head against the dresser. And it worked. Her face shattered, and I came to my mom and said I had dropped it accidentally. I'm sure she didn't believe me, as she scolded me quite severely for having done that to my great-aunt's wonderful gift, but it did work. She disposed of the doll, and thank God, it never showed up again. Unfortunately, due to this incident, to this day, I am extremely uncomfortable around old porcelain dolls.